A stray cat once stood between me and a vicious dog, and that was the moment I realised animals understand loyalty better than many humans. There are some animals that arrive quietly, and there are others who arrive like they've already decided you belong to them. Sparta was one of those. In 2017, while living in the Middle East, I began feeding a stray Arabian Mau cat outside my home. Like many street cats there, he was lean, alert, cautious, and clearly used to surviving totally on instinct. But once I fed him, something changed. He stopped leaving my doorstep. Not only that, he decided that nobody else was allowed near it either. Other cats would approach, and Sparta would drive them away like a sentry guarding a gate. He sat outside the door every day as if he'd appointed himself a protector of the place. There was something deeply watchful about him, something steady and unwavering. That was when I named him Sparta. Not because he looked fierce at first, but because of the energy he carried. It reminded me of a scene from the film 300 when King Leonidas shouts, "This is Sparta." And that was exactly how he behaved. Not loudly, not dramatically, just with complete certainty. One day, a large dog escaped from a nearby villa. The dog was aggressive and out of control. As it came towards us, I instinctively tried to move Sparta away to protect him. I was far more worried about him than myself, but as I moved, the dog lunged towards me and growled. Before I could react, Sparta jumped in front of me. He lunged toward the dog, growling low and deep, in a way I had never heard from him before. Then he hissed with such force and certainty that even the dog hesitated. And then, remarkably, the dog backed away. I still remember the shock of it. This small street cat, who had once slept outside, surviving on scraps, stood between me and danger without hesitation, not fearlessly, but deliberately, as though protecting me was simply something he had already decided was his responsibility. People often misunderstand bonds with animals. They think attachment only comes from ownership or time or training. But sometimes connection arrives instantly and silently. Sometimes an animal simply recognizes you. Sparta was never just a stray cat. He became family long before paperwork or flights ever made it official. By the time I prepared to leave the Middle East in 2020, I already knew I couldn't leave him. Not after everything we had been through together. Not after the loyalty he had shown me. And not after the quiet way he had woven himself into my life. And so Sparta came back to England with me, alongside the other animals I had rescued whilst living there. Some people couldn't understand why I would go through the difficulty and expense of bringing rescue animals across the world. But for me, there was never a decision to make. You do not abandon family. I think people often assume that protection only moves one way between animals and humans, but it doesn't. Animals protect us too, sometimes physically, sometimes emotionally, and sometimes spiritually. Sometimes simply by standing beside us during periods of life where we would otherwise have felt alone. Sparta arrived as a street cat, but what he really became was a guardian. And even now, when I think back to that moment with the dog, I realise something important. Courage does not always arrive in the form that people expect. Sometimes it arrives quietly, sits outside your door, and refuses to leave.